So, I was thinking about what's going on in the world today, like I do all day, every day. And today I wanted to talk about a hot button issue, and that is going to be federal student loans. And the reason I want to talk about that is because there's a lot of news going back and forth right now about the federal government using executive action to forgive up to $10,000 for certain borrowers. Um, and, while that is a certain issue that some people might celebrate, others might despise, I just want to cut through it and talk about some facts and just, you know, really give a real life background about my experience with student loans and some others that I've learned as a recent, somewhat ish college graduate. Not really, it's been over a decade, but anyway, so let's go ahead and talk about it. So the idea of forgiving $10,000 for certain buyers is a complete, or borrowers, sorry, is a complete political stunt. 100%. So they're eventually going to have to give up on this moratorium that they have going on with student loans, where they're holding back the interest and holding back payments until some date. They keep pushing it out and pushing it out and pushing it out. So here's all this revenue that the government isn't bringing in through these federal student loans, and it's creating a hole. It's going to have to be filled somewhere, and they're basically doing that by selling debt and printing more money. And so for the typical borrower, $10,000 is no small amount of money, especially if it's free, right? But other people realize that that money is not free. It's going to come from somewhere. It'll hit us in some way. And so at this point, there's so many other monetary things going on in our system, with COVID stimulus, with funding foreign wars, with funding all the government bureaucracies there are, funding our military, things like that. That this is just another, might as well. The fire has already started. Just dump a little more gas on it. Okay, it really doesn't matter to me, and it's not worth fighting my neighbor over, regardless of which way I believe it should go. And so keep that in mind, okay? It's really not going to be a big change for anybody. It's just a political stunt. It'll probably come into effect at the end of August, whenever the moratorium ends, and it'll be a feeble attempt to try to secure their voter base, and they'll eat it up like sheep and go vote again and be happy with that. Okay, but if you're like me, you like to look at the issues holistically and relate them to your own life and make a decision from there and move on. So with that, I'd like to kind of share a story about my experience with federal student loans and what I think should be done about them, and also some other stories I have about my college experience and some fools that I met there. So with that, basically my college experience, I borrowed a lot of money to go to college. I went for 4 years, graduated, got an entry level job, managed to pay it back by struggling. Okay. I mean, it was a lot of debt. And I worked and worked and worked and paid it back. And it took me several years. It was not an overnight process, it was not an easy process. And I got some help along the way, and from friends, family, whatever, in different forms. And I paid it back, and the debt's gone. Okay. But it took me several years. That first decade of my life, of my 20s, I was basically in severe debt, and I had a decent job and was making income, but it was not enough to cover my living expenses and the debt and everything. So I had to really cut back on expenses and be really strict with my spending. It sucked, and a lot of people I know had to do that. But here's the thing about student loans. They didn't ask me, what your major is going to be, what your plans to secure income on the other end of this is going to be, or anything like that. They just said, your parents don't make too much money, right? And they don't have too many assets that could fund your college, right? Okay. Well, since that's the case, we'll give you a bunch of money. And you have no credit, you have nothing. Okay. You have no assets, you have no income. Okay, I had income, but it was from working part-time minimum wage jobs, right? So woohoo. So anyway, it was ridiculous. It's the easiest loan ever to qualify for. You go and fill out some paperwork online, and boom, here's your money, and you get it deposited after It goes and pays the university, and it's free money, right? And I think that's a very dangerous thing to expose 18-year-olds, which is like, the typical age people go to college, because it created this huge misunderstanding of one, how money works, and two, uh, it created a huge sense of entitlement. And I have a story I'd like to share about that. My freshman year, here I am, a young idiot, going to college, borrowing money, and I had a roommate that was very passionate politically, very passionate, just in general, kind of off the cuff guy. Most 18 to 22-year-olds are, and so we were friends because we lived together, but we didn't agree on everything. And so he had a father who was a pastor at a local church in his area, a small town in rural Ohio. Okay. So when you think of churches right away, you either think of the rich mega churches or you think of all the other churches where everybody that works there is working on donations and probably doesn't have very much money. Okay. And that's how most churches are. And so, anyway, his father had a master's degree in like theology, and worked as a pastor for the church. And if you know anything about that, you know that a pastor's salary comes from the church and the following, right? The people there give money to the church to support the church and support the pastor and things like that. That's why they try to get people to come in and donate and things like that. There's a variety of reasons behind it. So regardless if you believe in that or not, doesn't matter. Here's the story. Uh, my friend, or my roommate, not my friend, I will say, got into a heated argument with me one day in front of several people about how unfair it was that his father did not make more money than he did, and they were poor and they had to struggle. And I said, well, why do you believe he should make more money? And he said, well, he has a master's degree in theology. It's a master's degree. Heavy emphasis on master's, okay? Postgraduate. And I simply recanted and said, well, I acknowledge that, but the market doesn't care about any level of degree that anyone has unless it has value. And clearly, the market does not dictate that a master's in theology in rural Ohio, nonetheless, has any value at all. And hence why your father doesn't have much income. And I sympathize with you on that because lower income is more difficult to deal with. However, the degree doesn't mean anything to everybody else. And therefore, it doesn't warrant a lot of income. And you wouldn't believe how quickly this kid lost his mind, screaming in my red in the face, right in my face, you don't get it, and he just went off on a rant, explosive rant, about how that's not right and all this type of stuff. And I just stood there and was like, wow, what a complete idiot. Okay. And the sad thing is I think he was sorely mistaken because he was in the ROTC at the university. And so he was in the Army Reserve. And I respect that. I really do. But the Army or any military branch has a rank and file structure where you meet this grade and you meet these criteria for this grade and you get this pay. Okay. So he automatically had kind of locked in his mindset that if I'm a high school graduate, I make this amount. If I'm a bachelor's degree holder, I make that amount. And if I make if I get to that master's degree, I'm going to be making the big bucks, guaranteed, right? Because I did that. I went to school and I got that and I met those criteria. And while that does play out for certain degrees, like, being a doctor or dentist or that, because there's all these kind of like bureaucratic loops you have to hop through to get to those things. And anyway, it doesn't really mean anything for basically everything else. Professional degrees, if you want to be like a licensed dentist, doctor, lawyer, things like that, there's a little bit of merit to that argument. But basically, every other degree in every other career field, it has no value. Case in point, I've hired people that have higher degrees than me. Okay. So I've worked in a business and hired people that have higher professional and doctorate degrees than I do. Okay. And I got paid more than them. Okay. I had better skills that were more applicable to my position and to the company and more valuable than somebody with a higher degree. Okay. So the degree doesn't define you. But this is the type of people that we're giving money out to through these subsidies, these federal student loans, where, they believe that if I just keep going to school, I'm going to be rewarded and make a bunch of money. Okay. And that is complete idiocracy. Going to school and getting specialized in something doesn't mean anything unless it holds value to the market. And if we were so smart and so educated, we would recognize that. But nobody studies economics anymore, it seems like. So, anyway, it was absolutely insane. And it just showed the level of entitlement that people are getting to. And this was, 10 years ago or so. So, it was bad then. It's even worse now how entitled college kids can be. And not all of them, but it's really sad to see. And it just makes no sense that the government says you can get whatever degree you want and you can have no job lined up. We don't care. Here's a bunch of money. Okay. I'm not saying there should be criteria in place for the government to follow before they lend money. I'm saying end the federal student loan program today. Forget it. Forget, you could forgive some loans to make some people happy and win your votes or whatever, but end the federal student loan program right now. Don't give out any more money. It's not worth it. It will drastically reduce the price of college by doing that, by the way, because nobody will be able to afford it anymore. And that's okay. We don't need thousands of people with generic degrees that don't have any technical skills or critical thinking behind them. We don't need that. And that's all America has. We have so many people that are highly educated with degrees that are completely useless. And that's why there's a struggle and there's this upset and people can't find jobs. Well, you didn't get skills that mean anything. People can't pay and buy a house because you have student loan debt, again, on a degree that doesn't do anything or make you any money. And it's an unfortunate thing. I understand the frustration, trust me. But, we walked into a trap. We chased the free money. We thought college is our ticket. It's time to change that mindset because it doesn't make you any better off, especially if you borrow for it. So that's my rant today. That's a real life story I wanted to share with you. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think of federal student loans, what you think of federal student loan forgiveness, and what you would do if you had any say in it. Thanks. I'll see you in the next one.